Um, there we go. So we are recording. So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our session. I just want to invite everybody off the top if you have any questions throughout our presentation, to just throw those into the chat as we go along, and we'll try to get to them once we get down to the end. But that's the plan for now. So thanks again for joining us. My name is Marnie Seal. I'm from the library, and I'll be kicking things off here with talking about our trail map to the research to the research process. So just from the library perspective, talking quickly about kind of the problem that we encountered with all of this. You know, it's really challenging for us in the library to connect with students in a timely way. We know that faculty are grappling with, you know, trying to process a lot of content early in the semester, and then they're also trying to find time to slot the library in there to talk about research skills with their students. And often the students don't see the connection because, you know, maybe they haven't received the assignment yet, so they don't know why this person from the library is blabbing at them about finding good sources. They haven't put it all together yet. So that's one of the problems that we first kind of encountered, and that brought us forward to look at this project. But I'll hand it over to Lynn to talk about it from her faculty perspective.
Thanks, Marnie. So yeah, my name is Lynn Kabaroff, and I am a professor in a couple of programs, actually. The first time I had Marnie come into my class was to talk about research and referencing for a class of physical fitness management students. And I found out really, really quickly that within my group of students, I had a very, very wide range of research knowledge, writing ability, potential of caring about where their sources were from, that sort of thing. And that's actually one of the reasons why I had brought Marnie in to begin with, was that, you know, I felt that she could probably do a better job at directing students in such a way that, you know, they might care about where they're looking. So over the years, I kind of struggled with how much time to dedicate to talking about, you know, proper research and, you know, levels of evidence and that sort of thing. And also how much to talk to students about referencing and plagiarism and all of that stuff that's so important. But I really, that's not my background or expertise, and my background and expertise was fitness and health promotion and rehabilitation, and now I'm teaching in the occupational therapy and physiotherapy assistant program as well, and along with some fitness and health promotion students. And I had a bigger pool of students to which I needed this information to come across. So, you know, I really know what I want my students to come out with. And I teach a specific health promotion class that I wanted students to really delve into a particular health promotion topic. I wanted them to look at you know, evidence-based practice in terms of how to treat that health promotion topic. I wanted them to look at some statistics. I wanted them to look locally within the Sudbury area as well as nationally. So I had an idea of what I wanted. I had a marking rubric of what I wanted, and yet students were still really struggling with where to go, what to do, what to start with, that sort of thing. And again, that's not my background in terms of how to research. I kind of thought that this was going to be taught to them in high school. And I was, you know, getting some students that they got it and others that didn't. So one day I was talking with Jessica O'Reilly, who's another one of our co-presenters here. And Jessica is an English professor. And we talked about the struggles that I was going through with my students, some strategies that we could collaborate on, And then I was lucky enough that she taught my students the following year. And so we kind of went from there. So I'll let Jess take it away from this point.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lynn. Yeah, so that's where I came in. And as an English teacher, what I struggled with was the complete opposite of what Lynn was struggling with. I really try to think about relevance and embeddedness in terms of their English communications and research and writing courses. How can I make students see that this is truly connected to the core content that they're learning in their other courses, to their profession ultimately? And so Lynn offered that solution up on a beautiful platter, complete with rubrics and everything. So she gave me the final product, the destination, as it were, in terms of the outputs of this course and this research process. So she and I collaborated on what that final research report, description, rubric, related presentation might look like. And then I walked students right from that first step all the way to the last with the help of Marnie in the library. So this is where the idea of the research workbook came in. Marnie and I jumped on a call. We opened up Lynn's documents and said, okay, this is where the students need to get. How do we bring them there in a supported, process-oriented way? And, you know, I've been a student for a really long time. I'm a chronic post-secondary student. And I think over my educational experience, something that's become intuitive is to take an assignment description and just naturally know how to piece that into its component parts, figure out the timelines, get it done. But that's the piece that I see my students struggle with the most. So the very first video that we created was that getting started video. And what Marnie and I did in a very casual, unscripted, jump on Zoom and hit record kind of way, we talked through the assignment and made sense of it. And we took that assignment and broke it up into, okay, so what is the need to know stuff here? And what do we need to get done by when to ensure success? So we really did model that process for students as if we were students in Lynn's course. And then we moved on to what you see in the image in front of us. Let's talk about accessing the library. And Marnie gave a great sales pitch as to why library resources in terms of credible sources might be a great place to start. We also talked about the open web, though, and how credibility can be available on the open web, but you need to apply those literacy skills and ensure credibility through. We used a framework called the CRAP framework that some of you might have heard of. So Marnie explained what the CRAP framework is and how to apply it. And then within the research workbook itself, students were required to go and figure out, okay, what do I need in terms of national statistics? Is this credible? How do I know? Let's walk through that process iteratively. And that's maybe something that this research workbook can be improved upon. We know research is not a linear process. This conveys a bit of a linear process. So I had to kick students back. Oh, you got a gap. You got to go back to the books. It's okay. It's part of the process. But making that piece visible, I think was really helpful for them. So we didn't want to do too much polish. We wanted to really focus on a conversational style, a show rather than tell approach. And so the series of videos that we included is just that. And rather than record in huge blocks of time like you might have in an actual Zoom class with students, we kept them short. 10 minutes or less for sure, ideally a couple minutes maximum length. So that video too, using library resources, a couple minutes of Marnie going into the virtual library, screen sharing, clicking around, and modeling that approach. So my hope was that students would take this, pause, go do, come back, reiterate, go do a little bit more. And overall, the process was quite positive, at least for us. And something that Marnie really emphasized in our conversation is let's not recreate stuff that already exists and is out there and highly effective. So she pointed us to a few video resources that already existed that we didn't need to recreate or build from scratch. So I'll let her speak to that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of what was so great about this process is that we were able to just kind of jump in and quickly put those videos together. But as I'm sure a lot of people who work in Libraryland know, we like to have a lot of resources at our fingertips that are ready to go to plug in. We always want to bring more resources to the table. So a great place that we were able to pull from is from the Learning Portal. That's developed by College Libraries Ontario. So it's our provincial libraries group, and everyone contributes content to it. And they have a lot of great content on a variety of topics. I think for this one, we pulled from the Research Hub. We might have also pulled from the Learning Online Hub a little bit, which is a brand new hub that we just developed during the pandemic to get everybody online and in a good place online. So that was I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to the Learning Portal for helping us with that and helping us, you know, for libraries, we often struggle with how to become more integrated into the courses. We always talk about, you know, that one-shot information literacy instruction session where we only have maybe 20 minutes to try to get to the students and explain the whole research process to them very quickly. And this opportunity was great because we could actually build it into the guidelines for the assignment in a meaningful way, and kind of point to some ready-made, very slick content that we already had in the pipeline to make it really come together. So yeah, just a shout out for the Learning Portal for sure.
So I first introduced the research workbook in a fully asynchronous online English course context last fall. So I didn't have Zoom time with these students. All I had were these documents and these videos. So my final question embedded throughout the workbook is, how might I improve upon this for future students? They offered some rich advice. I incorporated some of it and brought it into my winter semester delivery that just concluded. Now with that group, I actually did have a bit of Zoom time with them. We advocated for that and we were lucky enough to get a blended mode. So one thing I observed is students knew Marnie before Marnie ever came to our class. But when she did join us, it's like, oh yeah, that's the library person in all those videos that just made me watch. So there was already a relationship there, and we got to have a bit of a different kind of discussion than if it was just a one-off workshop that is a info dump. It felt a little bit more like a conversation. So here's a few direct quotes from students in terms of the efficacy of the research workbook. And they've given us a lot to think about in terms of future improvements. Something that I appreciated is they noticed that they were slowing down, paying attention, less procrastination. All of these were goals that we had in supporting students through that process. Something else that some students have suggested is multimodal delivery. So could we add audio? Could we replace some of those videos with a more text approach, or offer alternatives in that way? So that's something we can definitely think about. There was one question that confused students and just wasn't working. So I keep going back to that and asking them, how might this be more effective for you? I still need to think through that approach. But overall, I think what it's suggesting in terms of the feedback generally is it's working. It's helping them see the various steps involved in the research process and minimizing that anxiety that comes with this big, huge ask that's worth so much of their final mark, due on a certain day. And I remember when I was in school, it was a one and done. You got the assignment, maybe a couple questions, it was due, you got the mark, and then it felt over. But focusing on the process rather than the product, I think helps students to see that relevance and minimize anxiety so good learning can ensue. So, future iterations, we're going to think about this feedback critically. And I think Lynn saw some synergy in what she was conveying in terms of her class and the expectation that students themselves needed to present.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I think that there is a building on this process. We did learn a lot from running it through in the fall. As Jess has mentioned, we made some changes for the winter. But right off the hop, it did seem to give students a focal point, and give them a direction in which to go, which was huge for a number of them. The one thing I didn't mention earlier is what we had done also with this was I had a research report, like a formal written report on it. But then once the report was done, we gave feedback on it to the students. They were asked to create a lightning talk presentation on this. So it was the same topic. The students weren't needing to do another research binge unless that was some of the feedback they got from the report. But again, it helped scaffold the learning they already had done, and try to keep kind of the same forward step process. And as a result, it really, like, the quality of the final presentations were much higher than I've seen, kind of just as a scattershot approach. The same thing with the research reports as well. Very, very happy with the results that we were seeing with this. The other thing that was really nice about the workbook, and how Marnie and Jess kind of just threw on the camera and started talking about some of these pieces, is that for students, presentations tends to be a huge deal, right? There's just some students that just get overwhelmed with the public speaking part of this, and the anxiety level is high. Now, I'm not going to say that this took away the anxiety. Of course it didn't. Now they had to show their webcam on Zoom to make a presentation. But I said to them, I'm like, look at the conversation that Jess and Marnie had. It was not Hollywood quality, nothing against them, but it was real. You have to just be a real person presenting. You have to get comfortable with talking to people, whether it's on camera or in person. Just get her done. So that was really, Jess and Marnie were modeling within their videos as well for the students, that it didn't have to be like perfect in order for them to get their information across in a succinct and professional manner.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that too, like, as one of the students pointed out, like, it really was a real conversation. Our Zoom videos froze a couple of times, the audio might have been choppy here and there, but we were really just conversing and kind of talking through how we would approach this if we were kind of in their shoes, and they seemed to really find that helpful. So we feel that overall it was a pretty successful approach to come at it in this way. And I did just want to talk a little bit more about our future directions. So one of the great things that Jess has suggested that we try is connecting with students through the Ripen Level Up program. So as we mentioned, it's not entirely a polished, a very polished workbook. It lives in Google Docs and is connected in the learning management system for the students. I believe it's linked there for them to access it, but it's, as you saw from some of those screenshots, it's very basic, simple, with a simple layout. So what we're hoping to do through the Ripen Level Up program is to actually hire a student, perhaps a graphic design student, to help us pretty things up and make it a little more polished. The Level Up program is actually funded through the government of Canada and is open to all Canadian post-secondary students. So it actually compensates them for working on these projects that it connects them with. So we're really excited to look at some opportunities there to polish this workbook up a little further. And another thing that we'd really like to do is to perhaps create a more generalized version. As you might have seen in some of those earlier screenshots, because we're working with Lynn students, we pointed to the health sciences guide, that sort of thing. We'd like to make a generalized version that we could roll out to faculty in all departments, where maybe there's just a couple of details that they could plug in to make it more specific to their subject area. But we could make it more like a broader version that could be applied kind of across the college in different courses. And then kind of beyond that, we're thinking about, could we possibly put some Creative Commons open licensing on it and release it into the wild, into the world for other people to grab and to borrow. So that's kind of what we're thinking for our future directions on the workbook. And I see we do have some questions in the chat, and we do have a few minutes to get to those. So we'll pop into that.
Marnie, can I just jump in with one
Yeah.
point that I forgot to mention earlier?
Absolutely.
And that was, thank you, that was that not every single student in my health promotion class had to take English. Some of them had transfer credits because they had taken English maybe a long time ago or what have you. And so this workbook was actually hugely key for them as well. Because, you know, some students who you assume if they've taken the English class, they're good to go. But again, if it's been a while, or if it's not quite the same as what's going on with the other students, there's a little bit of anxiety with that. So Jessica and Marnie were kind enough to allow me to make that workbook available for any of my students. I kind of linked to it within my own LMS. And even the students that weren't in English with Jessica were continuing to use the workbook and work through it. I did not check up on them on each step of the way, but they had the pathway in order to use it if they chose to.
Yeah, and I see Sarah as well just asked about if the workbook is attached to the library or the individual classes. So yeah, like I mentioned, right now it lives in our LMS system, but it would be great. We think it would be great if we could roll out kind of the general version that the library could hold and pass to other courses. That would be great.
Yeah, I think there's a tension there, right? Because the context is so helpful.
Yeah.
Anchoring to the specific assignment with the specific deadlines and expectations, and pointing them to the rubric, thinking through the outlining process based on Lynn's rubric. All of that I find is extremely beneficial to learners, but then it inhibits the scalability, right? So finding that balance and maybe building learning objects that speak to the general but allow instructors to come in with the specifics, that's the sweet spot we're looking for. So for right now, rather than trying to scale right out of the gate, we're really focusing on, for this particular course, which is connected to this other particular course and this one assignment, let's keep it really grounded in the detail and see how that's going to work, and get something stable before we look to scale it across the different course contexts. But I do think it is feasible and helpful to think in that broader way. But also I think longer term, I do have plans to keep working with Lynn and Marnie to refine this contextualized version of the workbook. Something I didn't mention too is that this workbook was intended to get students right up to the drafting phase. So we weren't writing with them. That was going to be, okay, you've done your workbook stuff. Now let's switch gears. You've collected your information. It's time to start focusing on the communication piece of it. And some of the feedback was, well, let's talk about APA. Let's get into that. So they almost want the full shebang in one little workbook, which is fine. It continues on in the course context, but I was explaining a little bit more of the process in the chat. Students would submit the workbook. I'd give them very little feedback unless they had picked a really out there topic that was going to present super huge challenges downstream, try to redirect early on. And they also then, subsequent to the workbook, would submit a draft to me that I'd give a huge amount of formative feedback on, with the intention that by the time it reached Lynn's eyes, it would have been improved upon stylistically, content-wise, the whole gamut. Lynn and I would jump on a Zoom call and we'd co-mark these reports together, which was a fun experience too. She coming at it from that content expert lens, and me on with the English hat on, looking more for the mechanics, stylistics, APA adherence, and the like. But having that conversation helped us, I think, land at a grade that we were both quite comfortable with. Students would receive one grade from Lynn and a totally different grade from me based on this shared rubric. So we were looking at different things so that it didn't necessarily get an A with both of us if the stylistics and APA were a mess. They weren't going to do well with me, even though maybe their content and their research was solid. So I think that was good learning too. There's a lot embedded in there about working with various supervisors and different expectations depending on context. So that's something that I really enjoyed about this collaboration too. And hopefully it debunked some of the myths about the library and got them more comfortable with approaching the folks out in Libraryland as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to mention too, just about, you know, creating the general version, to your point, Jess, about how important the context is for making this such a valuable tool. You know, maybe that's something that we could do as the library, as the libraries. You know, we have it, but we won't give it to you unless you unless you include us. I don't know how we quite come at it, but basically just to say that, you know, we would love to work with more people on, you know, creating contextual versions of these for their courses. And you could do the same at your institutions. You know, pulling in the library is always great, and it always has great outcomes for the students. So just a shill for the libraries there. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from anybody? I don't see anything more in the chat, but thank you for the thank yous.
Yeah, thanks so much.
It was a very beneficial collaboration. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. I'll hit stop recording now so that we can wrap that up. Thanks everyone.